CardGamesTV Podcast. So we went to a locals tournament in Philly at Gardens of Earthly Delights. It was a best of three, but we only had 3 rounds. We had probably like 17 players or something like that, along those lines. So it wasn't as big as we wanted to, or expected. I expected it to be like at least a 30-man tournament, but it was less than that. But we did get close to 30 players, right? So that was better than nothing. I definitely expected more people to show up, but things happen. But it was a fun experience. It was our first official, tournament as a team, not just us as individuals, but as an actual team. So Team CardGamesTV1 represented. Had some people that recognize me, some people that know of me, or at least now they know of me because they met me, talked to me. Had somebody, just straight up, just like, hey, you're Heriberto. They just straight up, recognized me, and I'm like, yeah, I am that guy. And he asked me for a photo op, so I made sure that after my first game, which I won, by the way, 2-0 my opponent, I was playing against the Vegeta and Trunks deck. I was playing against that Vegeta and Trunks yellow deck, and he, after game 1, the guy, I called him over so we can do the picture while we had the chance, because we were going straight into round 2, which I ended up playing against. What deck was it? I had it written down. It was Majin, not Majin. Majin Vegeta. It was Majin Vegeta, the leader, the green leader that can get double strike, and has the ability to take a battle card from the bottom deck, the servant, and play it. And he kept playing the 3-drop 20k double strike that has servant, so it's a 30k double strike. Vegeta, they can attack. They can restand if your opponent counters. So he kept playing that over and over again. I was trying to get rid of it. I was trying to use one of my effects to shuffle his deck. By the way, I was using my two Zamasu leader, and it was my Tragedy Overground, Turning the Tides, SS Blue, Frenzy Burst, Burn, type deck. So it was like blue good stuff basically. So I had a lot of Zamasu cards in there, and got the Tragedy Overground strategy, and got the SS4 Vegeta to ramp, and of course 12 unisons. And I was playing a 60 card build, so that's what I was playing. And like I said, I won round 1. I ended up 2-1 against the Vegeta player because I beat him in game 1, but he beat me in game 2 and 3. Then on my third round, I played against Gohan, the Skillless Gohan deck that has the 10-drop Gohan. So I was playing against that. Ironically, if I'm right, that match was also a 2-1 because I beat him game 1, Android 17 Turning the Tide, and then game 2, I would have beat him again with Turning the Tides, but I misplayed. I actually have the recording of the duel. I misplayed because I forgot that he did play a blue unison, which means the Godzilla Trunks in his hand was actually usable. And when I played my Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, he turned into he got sealed, and it's like, I'm tapped out. And I was like, well, maybe I might get lucky. I might survive his turn which means next turn I'll drop Turn the Tides and I'll have game. But I didn't survive. He got me. He got me good. And that was fun. Ironically, that opponent, by the way, was the one who recognized me, and I agreed to take a picture with him. So there's a picture of me and him that might end up on Facebook groups. So that was cool. Now after took a picture and stuff like that, I was like, man, it'd be interesting if him and me end up playing, because that'd be kind of cool, since he recognized me and stuff. That'd be like, cool that we end up playing against each other. Interesting enough, all my opponents sorry, you all felt the stress. Expressed that the battle was hard, and that's good, because I definitely do my best to be difficult to play against. My second opponent had it the worst, because he literally was stressed out. He was like heavily breathing, and he was just kept repeating over like how stressful it was to play against the deck. And that's good. That's I appreciate that. As a deck builder, I appreciate that type of feedback. The fact that somebody could be like, "Yo, that deck was a problem." It's like, thank you. That says a lot about my deck building skills, right? So I appreciate that as a deck builder. So and I visually saw it. Like I saw it. I saw them shaking a lot. I was very casual, very laid back, not nervous at all. Sometimes back in the day, I'll say like way back in the day, I would be a little bit more nervous, concerned that I might make mistakes, misplay, but I wasn't. I was in the zone. I was in my comfort zone. I was having fun. I was debating between because I had Hatchiak, I had Boma. I know a lot of people would have me to play Hatchiak, but the build that I have it's an older build that I just don't want to play it no more. Like that specific build, it was like I got newer, more upgraded versions of Hatchiak, obviously. So it's like I want to play the newer builds. So if I'm going to take Hatchiak to a tournament, which I'll probably play Hatchiak the next event. Don't quote me, but I think I will, because all I have to do is just update the Hatchiak deck to the newer strategies that I'm using, and then I'll take that. But I was debating taking Boma Burn, but the thing is, most people know about Hatchiak, most people know about Boma. That's nothing new. Those decks are played sometimes in competitive play, so it's nothing new. But not many people take set 2 Zamasu to tournaments, so I was like, you know what, I'll play the set 2 Zamasu. I want to play something that most other people don't know, wouldn't expect, and would be a surprise to see. And it was true, and they were surprised, and they liked it, and they didn't like the stress that they were getting from playing against the leader, but they did like that it was it was something different, not something they were used to. So it definitely gave them a challenge, gave them something to enjoy. So when they get a W, they definitely could brag, because it wasn't an easy battle. I definitely didn't make it easy. That one misplay of the Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, and I got God Stealing Trunks, even though I knew he had it in his hand. I just forgot that he played the blue Majin Buu Unison, because he originally had Saiyan Scions. He had the Goku Jr. Saiyan Scions, and I forgot that he replaced it with the blue Unison, which means his God Stealing was active. So I got because I forgot. Say that rhymes, right? I forgot. Because I would have made a different play if I noticed that he had the blue Unison. It's like, oh, he has blue Unison, God Stealing Trunks is playable, and my 6th drop Vegeta does not have Deflect, and it'd be a bad idea for me to make that play. I'm better off playing my Absolute Unison and keep a couple energies up. That way I can negate, just keep my defenses up, because I had what is it called? This because it's about the extra card. Senzu I had Senzu so I definitely could use Senzu and my graveyard negates all too easy and stuff like that. In my Saiyan Synergy, Goku and Vegeta negates attack. So like I had a lot of defense in my hand that I could have played if I paid attention to the fact that he had to do Unison. I would have played those cards instead. So I misplayed and it happens. I misplayed and it cost me. I was one turn away because all I needed to do was turn and ties them, which was my goal, was to turn and ties them to, go for game. Most of my strategy, most of my goal was to get them down to at least 3 life instead of get them down to 2 and then try to turn and tides. Actually, get them down to 3 instead and go turn and tides, and that would work out for me when it actually did work out. The person, my third opponent that I was talking about, he got turned into tides twice, back to back. So I turned into tides. Next turn, used my Unison's ability to draw 2 cards and put a card on the bottom because I had Super Saiyan 4 Goku protected the Earth. And if I attacked with the leader, I drew, and the leader was the one that gave me turning into tides. So I was like, oh, I could turn in the tides this turn. Also chose not to charge the turn afterwards. So I still had 7 energy. I didn't have 8. I had 7 energy because I was like, oh, if I get another turn in tides, all I need is 7. Which I ended up getting a second one, and I was able to turn in the tides him again. Because he was able to fill up his hand again. But I turned in the tides, and it was funny. And he was like, man, after the match, he was like, if I turn in the tides him one more time, or if he didn't get his 10-drop Gohan, I had game. And I did win the first match, so the third match was obviously the tiebreaker. So, I had I had the possibility of winning because he was at 1 life. Obviously I was at 1 life because of the game. I also have that battle recorded. So game 1, round 1. I recorded. Round 2 I recorded, not perfectly recorded, but round 3 recorded. Round 2 is the one that I didn't record, so I don't have any audio of that of game 2. But I do have round 1 and round 3, so those games I do have recordings of. But yeah, I had fun. I enjoyed it. It was great. Definitely would like to have played more, but it was like late at night. So my experience was, with it was good. I got to play against certain decks that I haven't gotten much to play against. So that gives me good experience. So obviously that helps me improve as a player. Because if I ever go to, obviously not when, if it's when I go to another event and I face these decks, I will have that knowledge and experience from, these matches. So now I know what a lot of the cards do and a lot of the lines of plays, and I can, obviously adjust my play styles and strategies based off of those outcomes. Another thing that was interesting, and he'll know because he kept, he definitely pointed out, was the fact that I had the 2-drop and Goku striving to be the best in my deck, and that just gave me a lot of advantage. So it made the game way harder. So he had to rely heavily on his Gohan to help him, his 10-drop Gohan to help him in the game. You couldn't rely on his Unisons. His not Unisons. Well, definitely his Unison came in handy, but he couldn't rely on his skillless battle cards because they were 2-drop or less. But MVP card besides Gohan, the 10-drop Gohan, was his Majin Buu Unison, because the 2 times I turned in tides him, the Unison, when I attack with extra 17 turn tide, he will do the -1 ability of the Unison to bottom deck it, which ironically lets me stay in the game a little bit longer. So it prevents me from decking out, but it also was preventing me from being able to finish my opponent off. He only had 1 life left, and I just needed just 1 extra turn to try to go for game, right? But I ended up not getting that. But that was fun. It was great. Wish it was more than 3 rounds. But at least before the event happened, I was told that it was just going to be 3 rounds. So I was like, all right, not expecting too much then. That was my experience. So here's my teammate. So you can tell me what his experience is.
I sucked.
Oh no.
No. Yeah, I went 0-2. I played Universe 9. With the reboot leader, the reboot Bergamo. And I figured that the meta would be a little slower, but I lost this twice in the first 2 rounds to the same deck, the Universe 7 deck. And they were able to gain a significant advantage primarily because my deck goes off in turn 4. They were familiar with the deck and they knew that in turn 3, once you get the deck on the ropes, you pretty much can win from there if they don't have the finishing combo. So they just played exactly how I knew they would play. They put the pressure on in turns 3, and if you're not able to stop them or slow them down, the deck pretty much gets overwhelmed. It's one of those decks that have to build up to get where it's gotta go. A couple key misplays, not tapping out the Frieza. It's a dual attacker. They're all single strikes. There's really no double strikes. Turn 3, they put the pressure on with the Jiren Unison, which you uptick it and it's a double striker. I'm familiar with it. I use it in my red deck. So you uptick it, it becomes a double striker, and throughout the first couple turns 1 and 2, all you're doing is you're pushing. And the deck, because the deck needs to awaken to get one of the more powerful effects, which is dropping 2 or less for free. Because in the first couple turns, you're dropping 2 or less, you're taking a life. Normally, that's a good thing, except because you're not able to put powerful attackers out there, you're not really hitting their life because they're using their creatures to either just come after your life, or when they come out, they just kill all your monsters instantly. So you don't have that many attacks to put the pressure on. They're dropping 4 cost 19s for 1 energy, and when it comes out, they're basically minusing creatures, and your creatures don't get above 15 in the first few turns. In fact, you don't really start hitting 20k until turn 4. So in the first round, I wasn't able to get to turn 4 ever. He beat me in turn 3 before I could. My second game, I was able to get to turn 4 the second time, but the position I was in, the fact that in my life cloth, was one of the key cards I needed to make the combo, solidify the combo, because I needed that key blocker that becomes 30k, which makes him difficult to get over, and then he has barrier. So none of his cards would have worked against it. And that was the key play that I was looking for. However, that wasn't so. It wasn't to be. One of my key misplays was not being able to play my giant ball towards the end of the turn, which allowed him to extend his plays, essentially turning his dual attacker into a double striker. So it was interesting. The fact that the deck relies on milling and sending a lot of cards to the drop area, they was able to get a lot of cards off. So I think next time, because I have the ability to drop a 30k in turn 3, I think I might play with my Broly deck, Red Broly. It has 2 key cards that if I ever encounter Universe 7 will just totally just wipe the floor with it. And because the one key move that they need is they need to dump a lot of cards into their drop area in order for them to get, key sparking moves. My deck works similarly off the same concept. I just need a few key cards, so a lot of my cards untap and they get cheaper. Dreadedly, because I was in the third round and I had a bye. I was just standing there watching everybody else play. But like I said, looking at the meta, what's important to know is that a lot of these decks, they play very cheap, very free things, and understanding that my opponent, one of the key moves that they kept doing that I really wish I was able to take advantage of was they were not afraid to tap out. And my red deck takes advantage of that. If you're not afraid to tap out, my red deck takes advantage of that. And so there are a few things that I really wish that I was prepared for. I wasn't really prepared for that, but it was a learning experience. And I think that's the big takeaway for me, was that I really got a solid learning experience out of it.
Facts. Yeah, because personally for me, that was one of the key things that I liked, was the fact that it's like, first and foremost, especially when you're playing competitively, you want to get used to the idea of playing competitively. You gotta be, you gotta have the energy, sleep, and this and that. Be prepared, right? Have your play mat, right? Have your deck, as optimal as possible, right? Just be as ready as possible. Go there with the mindset of like, just playing your game. Don't be overthinking. Don't be trying to, focus on, other details that will potentially distract you from just playing the game.
Yeah.
Especially if you're used to playing the game, and you're used to certain results. Just play how you always play, and you will get those results. One of the things that I definitely noticed when I was playing, I was just happy to be there. Especially, it definitely helped when as soon as I first just came in, and I don't know the guy's name, unfortunately. But the fact that he recognized me, and said hi and whatnot, just, put me on a good mood, and all I cared about was just being there, having fun, looking forward to, playing competitive, at more events, looking forward to next week and the week after that and the week after that, right? Looking forward to the future, because I got a lot of things going on, so I'm just very positive. So it just, I was just having fun. I wasn't overthinking too much. A lot of the times I was just chit chat. Me and my opponent were just talking, like we were just having a regular conversation, but we're actually still playing the game. I actually had to catch myself, and it's like, okay, I'm enjoying this conversation, but we should be focusing on playing the game because we only have but so much time left. So let's just, play. Because obviously we can always talk afterwards, but that was the thing. It just felt so casual, right? It was just, like we're just here, we enjoy the game, we're having fun, and we're just playing. So that was really awesome. It just felt good that it wasn't, stressful, right? Unfortunately, my opponents would disagree. It was stressful for them, but for me, it was very fun, casual, laid back. Good conversations. Meeting new people is always good, right? Especially can't play this game by yourself. You need people. So it was good to meet people and to play against people.
Mm-hmm.
That I can actually see, because most of the people, because I have played against people online, and some people are not that friendly online. So it was nice to obviously be able to play against people who were decent people, respectful people who understand it is a game. You win some, you lose some, right? That's the other thing. There was no hurt feelings. Because I'm used to sometimes people being a little too opposition, right? Too, like, it's me versus the world. It's me versus the card game community or something like that. So they go to a tournament and it's all about, like, winning, and everybody's an enemy, and it's like, okay, then you're taking a little bit too far. Everyone's your opponent, everyone's your sparring partner, so to speak. So respect as is. Without them, you can't play the game. So respect your opponent. But there are so many people that just so self-absorbed, so single-minded, so individual, right? They don't realize that without the community, this game doesn't exist, right? Without other players, you can't play. If you want to play solitaire, hey, to each their own, but the game is useless without other players. That's why it's very good not to be toxic, right? And make people not want to play the game, because then if people are not playing the game, what happens? The game dies. You defeated the purpose. Like, if you like playing the game, then you need to put some positivity out there so people will want to play. That's how things should be.
Yeah, of course, yeah. There's plenty of aspects to the game that can definitely be improved upon. I think that as long as the players continue to improve, as long as the players continue to be inviting, there are certain things about the game that should be gate kept, but we should be very, very inviting to a lot of people. The more the merrier, the more diverse ideas, because I remember speaking to somebody and he said something that I always like to contest to, that some leaders, some people don't want to take a chance on. They look at it and they're like, okay, there's not really much I can do with it. And then some leaders they look at and people will be like, what's the point of this? I'll admit, myself, I thought the same way, and like I said, my mind was changed totally today about the yellow Vegeta leader, which I seen no real value in until I seen the deck in action, and this guy really made me respect it. I was like, oh wow, he was able to put together a lot of good card combinations and took advantage of it and maximized his abilities, which I guess, because I wasn't looking at the deck in its entirety, that I didn't see the potential in it. But it had a lot of potential. He had a lot of staying power. You were able to overcome it, but the fact that he had that kind of staying power, it's like, there's just a couple more cards in there. Like if he had a flying Nimbus at his disposal, because he can pitch a Trunks or a Vegeta, put it in his drop area, and just get it back with his leader. And because he was able to keep recycling, I was just thinking to myself, like, yeah, there's no reason why you should not be playing Flying Nimbus. Yeah. But to each their own. If he felt like, okay, that's not a card he didn't need, I can't check nobody on that. I was the one that got O2'd, but I just was like, because you have that kind of staying power, you might want to be able to add on to it, because you would be able to not only stay in the game a little bit longer, but you would also be able to keep your opponent on the ropes, limiting what they could do to you. So hopefully he's able to do that next time. He went up against Black Dr. Dr. Uedo and Dr. Kochi. He went up against that deck and he lost. And I'm standing there just looking at it and I'm like, yeah, your opponent is not really putting any monsters, any creatures out there, but because he's able to just limit your attacks, no matter how many you put out there, he's able to limit what you do. That just brought me back to the very idea of my red deck is to go wide and put a whole bunch of creatures out there, but he would just try to slow me down. So I guess it really just comes down to preference, but I think that there would be a lot of benefit in looking into cards that you may not necessarily think are good for you off back, but maybe good in certain situations. Also, I've seen, people playing, different speeds of different types of decks and everything. I think that is so healthy for the game. Everything can't be fast where you're dying in turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, but everything can't be too slow to where games are going to turn 10, turn 11, unless both decks are trying to win in turns 10 and turn 11. It's nice to have a variety. Excuse me. So,
yeah, variety is the spice of life.
Yeah, right. I enjoy it. I want to see more of that in all of my card games. I don't want to see a single linear line of play, or play styles where everybody's just playing the same things. Even though I did run into 2 of the same decks, I feel as if I seen the potential in both of them. And like I said, I played way better against it the second time than I did the first time. And so I knew that there was possibilities, and I knew what they were going for, and I knew what I needed to take advantage of. So.
You definitely want the element of surprise. You definitely want an advantage.
Yeah.
If you think about it, see, I won the first game of all my matches.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I lost game 2 in the second match. The second game in the second matches. In the matches of game 2 and game 3. Round 2 and round 3. So if this was best of 1, I would have won all 3, right? I would have been undefeated because I won all the first games. So I won the first game. I had the advantage. Part of it was the element of surprise. Most people were surprised on how the leader worked.
Yeah.
Some people did recognize it. They're like, oh yeah, I know that leader. But it was the fact that, like, okay, I'm not prepared to deal with the leader. It's going to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's good, because that's the whole point. It's supposed to be. So it was a good choice to play the leader. It was fun. That was the other thing. It was fun. It was a good choice because it definitely gave me a lot of leeway against whoever I was playing. And I did one of the things that sold me on the idea. I was like, you know what? I don't know if this is going to be best of 3 or best of 1. So it'd probably be a better idea that I go with Zamasu because he has technically two life bars, right? He has technically 16 life as opposed to 8 life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like in a best of 1 situation, yeah, he's a really good leader to play with. So took into account that, hey, best of 1. But even if in best of 3, you always want to win the first game. You always want to win game 1. Always want to do that. And especially when you have the element of surprise, when your opponent doesn't know your deck, doesn't know your spice, your tech, right? Mm-hmm. So you always want to win game 1. Once they realize what your deck is capable of and whatnot, what your spice is, and of course they're going to side deck. And I didn't side deck, by the way, so gotta point that out. I was playing with no side deck. All my opponents, obviously game 2 they sided and we played. They side and we played. So when we did get to game 3, so there's a possibility that what helped them do better against me was the fact that they sided. I was performing just as well as I do without it, so didn't need to do much. Most of what I needed was already in my main deck. Just like in game 3 against my opponent who was playing the 2-drop skillless Gohan strategy, the fact that I had main deck, the Goku striving to be the best, gave me an advantage just by it existing. I deliberately mulliganed 4 cards away, kept 2 cards. Obviously, Turning the Tides was one of those cards. I think the 5-drop Super Saiyan 4 Goku Protector Earth Unison was the other card I kept, and then the rest of the 4 cards I mulliganed, expecting to draw one copy of Striving to be the Best Goku, which I did, and it's like, oh, here we go. I'm gonna play it again. And I dropped it, and he was like, oh, damn it, you got it. It's like, yeah, I deliberately mulliganed 4 cards just to see if I can get the card again, because it was useful in the first game. You know, it should be useful again, because it actually has, you know, it's actually good against your deck. So it wasn't good against everybody else's deck that I was playing against, because most of them had, you know, 3 drops and above that I had to deal with. So it wasn't useful against those matchups, but it was useful against my third matchup. So it's good that I had it, right? And like I said, I don't side deck, so you know, the fact that it was already in there, it already was something that gave me an advantage. It definitely helped, because he definitely would have won faster. Then the game would have been easier for him if it wasn't for that card. So the card being in there made the game way harder. So that's a good thing. You always want to make the game harder for your opponent, but easier for yourself. You know, one thing that I definitely got from this game, I mean from this tournament, was this like, yeah, I need to put my Mudgeon Defier West Supreme Kai's back into the deck. It's like, yeah, I got a ramp. Definitely need to put her back in there. Interesting enough, the Mudgeon Vegeta player, my second opponent, he, you know, suggested some like a nice little loop that I'm going to look into. So that was nice, and that's another thing that was awesome, was, you know, the fact that people would, you know, gave feedback. That's always good, and they gave proper feedback, not like you know, your deck's trash or some random shit like that, or oh, your deck's good, and then left it at that. It's like, no, they had nice things to say, which I appreciate, but they, you know, had some suggestions, which I also appreciate. Especially if it makes the deck stronger. I'm all for, you know, improving upon a concept. You know, because that's the thing. As players, we always want to get better. And an extra thing you think about, since this was a Philly tournament, you know, we're Philly residents, is like, you know, we look out for one another, right? So that's you know, so when we go out of Philly to other tournaments and events, we're representing Philly, so it makes sense that we, you know, help each other improve and get better at the game, because one, it makes for a good community, good game when everybody is at a good level. I'm not a fan of my opponents, you know, being not as good as me. I prefer close to my level or better, because realistically, you always want your opponents to always be better, because that helps you improve. If your opponents are not better than you, then it's hard for you to improve, because, you know, the game is too easy. You know, the games, the matches are too easy that you don't ever really need to put in extra effort to improve. So you typically don't improve. The idea is that the way you learn is from somebody who's better. You know, you don't typically learn from somebody who's worse than you, right?
Facts.
You learn from those who are better.
Facts.
And that's how you get better.
Facts. Yeah. And I definitely learned a lot today. I definitely learned about sequencing cards and choosing better cards. There's a couple cards that I definitely want to switch out. Definitely a couple cards that I want to look more into just for defensive purposes. A couple of unisons I want to look into for staying power. Like I said, I hope that they do come out with a unison for the deck that particularly works better with it. Because the unison that they have, while it's good, and it has a lot of staying power, it also has a couple of downsides. But I think that if I focus less on the downsides, I can make it work. So that's just something that I'm personally going to look into myself. What else did I want to say? Yeah. And overall, like, I take nothing away from my opponents. I take nothing away from what they were able and capable of doing. I had a lot of fun. I can't wait to get, another opportunity to do it again, because I think that I will bring a much more experienced deck, a deck that's much more ready for the meta. I wanted to play something classic. I always wanted to give that deck a try. And a lot of my playtesting, I always played as if my opponent played slowly, a more methodical play. They didn't just come on out outright. But that was my mistake. Something always to learn is when you're playtesting, especially if you're playtesting in your mind, you want to make sure that you account for certain things. Like, what if your opponent's able to just drop 2, 3, 4 creatures with a lot of power? Do you want to take all those hits? Do you not want to take all those hits? What do you want to do? Do you want to get in double strike range? You don't have the power to rejuvenate or anything with any staying power, so a lot of your cards don't have barriers, so they're just going to die. A lot of your barrier cards are going to come out turn 4, so you have to live till then. And it was interesting because I was able to drop the 7-drop Bergamo with triple attack and barrier. So it was so significant, even though that was the round in which I wanted to drop, because I was in a better position. I really wanted to drop the Brothers card and drop 2 more, Mark of the Wolves, but all I had was the 7-drop that becomes 4 when all his energy's tapped. So I made sure he tapped all his energy. So then I paid 4 and I brought it out, and I was able to keep both of his Friezas and his Goku tapped, and they would be tapped until my next turn. So he wasn't able to use them, but he was already in a commanding position. And because he had his Jiren out there, I used my triple attack on the Jiren. What I should have done was use my triple attack on his creatures, but I seen that he was going to keep protecting them and saving them. So I was like, well, I might as well just try to use it on his Jiren and down tick his Jiren. But as far as cards they'd never seen before, because he never experienced that card, he actually tried to kill it with an effect that it has barrier. So he was like, yeah, minus this, minus that, minus this, minus that. And I was like, you can't minus this. He was like, well, I was like, it has barrier. He was like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, this doesn't ignore barrier. Sorry about that. I was like, yeah, that's a good trick. It was a good trick. He tried to counter Fidel. So he tried to hit me with that Fidel. And I was like, that's a good trick, but she doesn't ignore barrier. And so yeah, he like, you tried it. He was like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was like, yeah, you tried it. It was a good move, but so then he had to deal with it. If I had Mark of the Wolves, it would have been a lot better. But I didn't have it. I didn't draw it. It was the one time I didn't draw it. Had I had Mark of the Wolves, I would have been able to win. But I didn't draw it in that turn. So kudos to him. I had bad luck. I wasn't drawing cards like I needed to. Another thing was, I keep forgetting that deck does not like to awaken on my opponent's turn. I need to awaken on my turn to take advantage of the untapping of energy, because a lot of my cards don't, like I said, they don't have staying power. So I need to be able to play on my turn and then get the free drop at the end, and then it doesn't matter if I'm tapped out on my opponent's turn, because I play everything on my turn, and it all gets defensive. Problem was that I was prematurely awakening, and that does not benefit me. That did not work to my benefit. So they were able to outpower me, and the rest is history.
Yep. Definitely don't be premature. There's so much fun. Definitely when you play, try to not stress out. I know it's hard to control your emotions and your feelings, but you play a better game. You definitely enjoy it more when you're not fully focused on every detail, and definitely don't overthink. This is part of why you play test, right? This is part of why you practice with your decks, do a lot of test hands, right? Shuffle, draw your hand, mulligan, shuffle. You want to practice that a lot and get into that habit, because you want it to be an instinct, right? You want it to be a reflex that you play a certain way, because that would be the most optimal way you play. I want to point out one of my misplays, besides the whole me playing the six drop Vegeta and it got sealed, which is not good. There was a much better, more optimal play I could have done, where it has to do with the 6-drop Vegeta, where I didn't play the 6-drop Vegeta. I instead played the 5-drop Unison, Super Saiyan 4 Goku Protector of the Earth Unison, to get the auto and clear my opponent's board. But what I should have done was play the Vegeta, got the 4 energy, swung with the Vegeta, Senzu Bean, because I had it in my hand, Senzu Bean, that way I'd be back at 5 energy, then do the Super Saiyan 4 Goku, the Protector of the Earth Unison. That way I would have, of course, at the end of turn, I'll have a 30k blocker, plus I have the auto, in effect, plus, I'll have the ability to -2 the following turn if I need to clear my opponent's board, for me to, turn in the tides and go for game, or play any, anything else I might want to drop, like my 9-drop Zamasu, which has dual attack and has the ability to send itself to drop in order to bring out Tragedy Overground. So I could have potentially done that, but I didn't. So that was a misplay on my part, because I was focusing on trying to, clear my opponent's board. But I forgot that the optimal play was to do Vegeta, then Senzu Bean, then play the Unison, which I've done many times before online. I just, at this moment, I forgot, because I tapped 5, I played the Unison, and as soon as I put it on the board, I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to play Vegeta and then Senzu Bean and then do this. I messed up. So instead of taking it back, obviously, I already made the play, so I just continued on with my play. I did record the match, so I do have that match, right? Yeah, that match where I did that. I think that's the same match where I did that play. Unless that was the Game 3 against the Majin Vegeta player, then no, I don't have that match. But that's the thing, and small little details like that, like little mistakes like that, tapping out at the wrong turn, this and that. Obviously, we're humans, the heat of the battle is what I was saying to my partner earlier, was like, yeah, sometimes, you got the heat of the battle, or the fog of war, as they say, where sometimes you don't notice something that was always obvious, like something, like you make a mistake that typically you wouldn't make, like if you weren't so focused on something, you would have noticed something else. And that's the thing, is that you don't want to be so focused that you lose focus, if that makes sense, that you lose focus from other possibilities, from other lines of play. I definitely knew my opponent had a charismatic villain Frieza when I was playing against a green player, other than he had a green Unison, right? The meager green Unison. It was the fact that he actually had a charismatic villain Frieza in his energy area. So I'm like, oh, that means he has one in his hand. And he has a green Unison. He definitely has it. So that his energy is a reflection of his hands. Just like the blue Gohan player, he had a Goku Trunks in his energy, but he bounced it back to him by some effect. It was either the leader or Unison effect. Something bounced it back to his hand. It's like, he has Goku Trunks, but he didn't have a blue Unison yet, so it wasn't a problem. But when I played my Vegeta, when when I looked over when I played it, I immediately saw like in the corner of my eye, I saw the unison, the blue unison. I'm like, oh shit, I forgot he has the blue unison, which means Godsend Electronics is playable right now, and I wasn't counting on him doing it. I wasn't counting on him God sealing. So that I would have obviously played differently. I would have played different cards and waited until turn 7 and then turn into ties because, turn ties has the flex. So the idea was that I want to get turning ties. Obviously, I want to get there, but I also want to try to take advantage of ramping. So that's how I went the ramp route, but I forgot that he had the blue unison, so that misplay cost me that match, or that game, I should say. But lesson learned, and obviously, if I play this deck again, right, I'll definitely try to avoid making that same mistake. That's another thing. Not only the playing the typical lines of play. That one time that I forgot to play my optimal play, which was the Vegeta, Senzu Bean, and then Unison play, which I typically do. I learned, other strategies and other lines of play, especially when it comes to certain, like if my opponent's being aggressive, being a little aggro, right? Playing, I learned real quick on how to adapt to it. I took advantage of my leader ability to send a life from my from my life to the drop so I can draw. Then when and basically use the leader's ability to get myself to be able to awaken, draw 2, swing with the leader, draw another card, so I can essentially get 4 cards in one turn. I've done that a couple times before, but it was just because I could. But to actually make that decision while you're playing and be like, you know what, since you're being a little more aggressive, instead of me sitting back and letting you just like attack me, and that's how I get my quote unquote card, get my card advantage that way of you dealing me damage. I'm a self awaken basically. I'm gonna try to speed up and awaken myself so that way I can try to take advantage of that. So keep my hand size bigger, and then start making these plays. So I switched up my play on the fly based off of my opponent, so I adapt. One of the things I've said before when I play Yu-Gi-Oh was the idea that's like I don't side in cards. I side in experience. I don't side deck because my ability to play my cards differently. The fact that most of my cards are pretty generic in the way they function, they tend to have more than one effect anyway. The way I use them in combinations allows me to do things with them that are, they're equivalent to if I had a card that did that thing. Like I can use cards to board wipe my opponent when the card is not designed to be a board wipe. It's how I use it that gave me that outcome. So I have board wiped, right? Clear my opponent's battle cards with cards and effects that aren't obviously board wipes. It's just that in the right use, I was able to get that type of results. So I was able to, clear some stuff and deal with certain situations just by my ability to be creative and adapt to the situation. And that's a really important skill to have. That's how you know you're good, right? If you can make something do something that otherwise it wouldn't be able to do per se. Right? It's like, oh, this card combined with this card gives me this amazing outcome, right? So it's kind of like cooking, you're mixing certain ingredients and you create something new, you create something, different. So I do the same thing when I play. I play my stuff differently, I mulligan differently sometimes depending on my matchups. Just like that opponent, the Gohan player, where I mulligan 4 cards. Typically I mulligan 3, and I was mulligan 3 throughout a lot of my matches, but in that one game, I was like, all right, I'm gonna mulligan 4 instead, so I can increase my chances of getting the Goku striving to be the best, because it was actually useful. It made the game hard for my opponent and easier for me, so of course, why not try to get it in my opening hand? And I did, and it definitely put in work. So some obviously honorable mentions, some MVP, obviously turning the tides was putting in work for me. A large majority of my wins was turning the tides. Putting in some work. And against one matchup, Goku Striving to be best was MVP, right? My unisons, Giant Force, right? Yeah, all my unisons. Raditz Giant Force, Go Tanks, Absolute Unison, and Super Saiyan 4, Goku, the Protector of the Earth. They all put in work, and I have 12 unisons in my deck, obviously, 60 card build. Ironically, my third opponent, which was the guy who wanted a picture with me and recognized me, he asked me how many unisons was in my deck. And I started counting, and it's like, oh yeah, I only got like 3 unisons in my deck specifically, so I only have 12 unisons. And he thought it was funny. He's like, oh damn, only 12. Normally you have more. Like, yeah, it depends on the build. I can have more, but yeah, I only have 12 in that specific build. But I am thinking of increasing the unison count, so I am debating on adding another unison, so I could get to 16, maybe 20 unisons for the deck. We'll see. Another thing I noticed is that the build that I currently have doesn't have Dimension Magic. I'm like, I am missing Dimension Magic. I need to, put Dimension Magic back in the deck. Definitely useful card. Another MVP definitely was putting in some work, especially to reduce me from decking out so quickly. Was Almighty Do-Over Zeno. He definitely was putting in work. Some of my opponent's battle cards, like the Vegeta player, some of his battle cards had barriers, so I had to be creative and use my Go Tanks instead to get rid of his barrier cards. So I had to use a combination of Giant Force to bounce one of his battle cards that don't have barrier back to his hand, and then play the Gold Tanks, and then do the -3 and ignoring barrier, put to the bottom of the deck the two battle cards that has barrier, put it at the bottom of the deck. And that's how I was able to clear the board by a combination of effects. Not to mention the fact that obviously I attacked with the Raditz Unison to the leader to deal some damage, then did the effects of the Unison, and then play the Gold Tanks, and then use the Gold Tanks to help clear the board, and then swing for 20k and still be able to keep up a 20k blocker for my opponent's turn, for the clapback. And that's the thing, you gotta keep your defenses up.
Mm-hmm.
So my defenses were definitely up. I was trying to implement the idea of turn 3 and above, try to keep some energy up. So I was doing that more. I was trying to, because I've been trying to make a habit of doing that, keeping some energy up. And I didn't do it a lot. There was a lot of times where I tapped out, but they were justified. I was in situations where I really had to get rid of some problematic cards, so I had to tap out in order to do so. But for the times that I didn't need to, tap out, I didn't, and kept my defense up, and for good reasons. They did put in the work. They did definitely do what I needed them to do. So there are some, changes I will make to the deck based off of, the results. Not necessarily the matchups or anything like that. Some people have a habit of doing that. They learn from the wrong part of their losses, for example, right? From the wrong part of their matchups. They usually look at the fact that they lost, and they, try to look for ways to essentially try to prevent that. For me, though, it's not about, I need more of this or that to try to prevent losing, right? It's like, no, I need this and that to improve my chances of winning, right? It's like, I need my little 2-drop Magenta Western Pink Kai, because it will help me ramp up faster. And I always use it a lot in a lot of my blue decks, because it helps me ramp up. It helps me play a card 1 turn sooner. And during my matchups at the event, there was times where I was like, man, if if I could play Turn the Tides on turn 6, it would make a huge difference as opposed to waiting for turn 7. So that's why being able to ramp up is very important, very crucial. And it's like, okay, I need to add that to ramp up so that way the deck works better. Not, oh, I need more stuff to deal with the meta, or I need this when I have this matchup and that. Like, no, I just need to improve the deck so the deck does what I designed it to do, because the deck's good. It's just, ramp wise, it is a little bit slower. So that could be fixed. Obviously, don't gotta fix the unisons. The unisons, like I said, they were MVP. They were putting in work. Turning the Tides, obviously MVP, putting in work. Got me some games in. Obviously, if I was to play best of one, pre-sale, whatever, right? Best of one event. Yeah, Zamasu definitely would be a good deck to play, or Zamasu Turn Tide, or whatever you want to call it, deck. It definitely would be a good strategy to play because it definitely was putting in work. I would definitely want the ramp capability, right? So that way I can turn in the tides as soon as turn 6. If I put in, what's his name? A Weiss Resting Attendant, I could potentially play turn tides turn 5. Which, not a bad idea to do so. Why not, right? Not only that, I just pointed out that, ramping up to turn tides, definitely would have been very useful, and, because it would have been really strong to do so. It's more for certain other cards, because there's times where I needed to play my 4-drop Unison on turn 3. I needed to play my 5-drop Unison on turn 4. So the ability to ramp would have definitely helped, because I didn't do much on turn 1 with energy. I didn't do too much with turn 2 with energy. So it would have been nice to have the ability to, essentially ramp. To play the 2-drop Margin on the Fire on turn 2 would have been, obviously optimal, because it would definitely ramp me up, as well as it just gives me something better to play on turn 2 than to play nothing. And that's the end of the podcast.